Dracula. Bram Stoker's Transylvania wasn't born solely from folklore. It emerged from Victorian anxieties like a bat from midnight shadows. This universe, where an aristocratic predator feeds on innocent blood, first sank its fangs into public consciousness in 1897, but the wounds have never truly healed. At its core, Dracula embodies our primal fear of corruption, sexual, moral, and spiritual. The Count doesn't merely kill, he transforms. His victims become reflections of himself, forever altered, forever hungry. In his universe, purity is temporary and darkness is patient. The symbolism remains indelible. The castle perched like a vulture over civilization, moonlight streaming through arched windows, and that hypnotic gaze promising both pleasure and oblivion. The blood is the life, Renfield reminds us, a communion twisted into parasitism. Philosophically, Dracula confronts us with the aristocracy of evil, how power, when unchecked by mortality, becomes monstrous. The Count isn't merely undead, he's the ultimate outsider, the foreign other who threatens to colonize our bodies from within. Perhaps what truly haunts us about Stoker's creation is not that monsters exist, but that they can wear such seductive masks, making us willing participants in our own destruction. Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's Gothic masterpiece wasn't crafted in a laboratory but birthed from a nightmare during the stormy summer of 1816. Her universe, where human ambition collides with natural law, continues to pulse with uncomfortable vitality 2 centuries later. Frankenstein taps into our existential terror of playing God, only to discover we lack the wisdom to manage the consequences. The unnamed creature, sewn together from grave-robbed parts, stands as testament to our fear that creation without compassion spawns only suffering. The imagery haunts our cultural memory. Lightning animating dead flesh, the creature's outstretched hand seeking connection, and the lonely Arctic wasteland where creator and created finally confront their shared doom. Did I request thee, maker, from my clay to mold me man? Milton's question echoes through Shelley's universe, unanswered. Beyond the horror of reanimation lies a deeper philosophical wound. The monstrous isn't the creature, but our capacity to abandon responsibility for what we create. Shelley's universe forces us to consider whether true monstrosity lives in the being stitched from corpses or the mind that conceived him and then turned away. In the shadow of the creature's suffering, we must ask ourselves, what does it say about humanity that our creations so often reflect not our divinity, but our capacity for cruelty? The Cthulhu Mythos. H.P. Lovecraft constructed a universe where human significance dissolves like salt in the vast, uncaring ocean. Beginning in the 1920s, his cosmic horror vision didn't scream for attention. It whispered madness from the periphery of comprehension. Unlike traditional horror, the Cthulhu Mythos embodies our most sophisticated terror, cosmic insignificance. Lovecraft's universe doesn't hate humanity. Worse, it doesn't even notice us. We are microscopic accidents in a reality ruled by ancient entities whose mere appearance shatters sanity. The iconography remains unshakable. Non-Euclidean geometry of Arlia, the tentacled face of sleeping Cthulhu, forbidden tomes bound in human skin. Funglui mulwanaf Cthulhu relie wugahnagul ftagen. A mantra not meant for human tongues, hints at knowledge never meant for human minds. On a deeper level, Lovecraft's mythos confronts our desperate need for cosmic significance. His universe suggests the most terrifying truth, that human consciousness itself may be an evolutionary misstep, allowing us just enough awareness to glimpse how small we truly are, but not enough to bear that knowledge. The true horror of Lovecraft's creation is that it continues to grow without him, like the old ones themselves, slumbering beneath our rational world, waiting for the stars to align once more. The Twilight Zone. Rod Serling opened a door in 1959 not located in space but in the human mind. His anthology universe, existing somewhere between science and superstition, illuminated the shadows lurking within post-war American optimism. The Twilight Zone manifests our fear of the inexplicable within the ordinary. Its terror lies not in grotesque monsters, but in the realization that reality itself is fragile, potentially shattering at any moment to reveal something incomprehensible beneath the surface. Those signposts are burned into our cultural consciousness, a shattered eyeglasses beside books that will never be read, a cookbook with humanity on the menu, suburban streets emptied by paranoia. It's a cookbook! Remains perhaps the most chilling punchline in television history, revealing how easily trust becomes the instrument of our destruction. Serling's universe serves as a philosophical looking glass, reflecting Cold War anxieties, racial tensions, and technological fears through parables too disturbing to address directly. Each episode whispers that the greatest horrors aren't invaders from space, but the prejudices, greed, and cruelty coded into human nature. What keeps us returning to this dimension is the uncomfortable suspicion that perhaps we've always lived in the Twilight Zone, a reality where truth is subjective and madness is simply a different way of seeing. Alien. Can you hear it? That faint scratching from inside? The universe Ridley Scott unveiled in 1979 didn't just take us to the stars, it followed us home, nesting somewhere behind the ribcage. I once spoke with a marine biologist who confessed that after watching Alien, she couldn't look at parasitic wasps the same way again. Nature already invented the xenomorph, she told me. Scott just gave it acid for blood. The alien universe embodies our terror of invasion, not of countries or even planets, but of our bodies. The xenomorph doesn't simply kill, it uses us as incubators, making birth itself an act of destruction. The facehugger's obscene embrace, the chestburster's bloody emergence. These images transformed pregnancy from creation to violation. Aboard the Nostromo, we encounter a perfect organism unclouded by conscience or delusions of morality. I admire its purity, Ash tells us, his synthetic admiration revealing the corporate callousness at the heart of this universe. Here, human lives are expendable, measured only in potential profit margins. What haunts us about this universe isn't just the creature designed with nightmarish biomechanical precision by H.R. Geiger. It's the revelation that in the cold vastness of space, humanity's greatest predator might be its own institutions, willingly sacrificing lives for specimens of substantial commercial value. In the vacuum where no one can hear you scream, perhaps the most terrifying question isn't whether we're alone in the universe, but whether anything recognizably human will survive our encounter with the void. The Shining. Overlook Hotel. The Overlook Hotel stands in isolation, snowbound and majestic, a cathedral dedicated to American ghosts. Stephen King conceived it, but Stanley Kubrick transformed it into a maze from which our imagination has never fully escaped. This universe channels our dread of history's inescapable gravity. The hotel doesn't merely contain hauntings, it is itself a haunting, a place where time folds back on itself, where the past refuses to stay buried under the pristine snow. The imagery burns like frostbite in our cultural memory. An ocean of blood pouring from elevator doors, twin girls holding hands in a hallway, red rum scrawled in childish handwriting, and an axe splintering through a bathroom door. Here's Johnny, a line borrowed from American entertainment transformed into the battle cry of madness. The Overlook's long corridors invite philosophical wandering. Is evil a supernatural force or merely the ghosts of our own weaknesses magnified by isolation? Jack Torrance's Descent suggests that perhaps monsters don't create evil places. Evil places simply reveal the monsters already lurking within ordinary men. When Jack studies the photograph from 1921 and discovers his own face staring back, we confront the most disturbing proposition of this universe, that we have always been here, that we will always be here, and that our darkest impulses are not personal demons but inherited curses, passed down through generations like heirlooms we cannot discard. Pet Sematary. Sometimes dead is better. This mantra from Stephen King's most personally frightening work isn't just a warning, it's the thesis statement of a universe that confronts our most primal denial. Let me ask you, what would you sacrifice to avoid saying goodbye? How much wrongness would you tolerate just to hold someone's hand one more time? Pet Sematary excavates our terror of death, not our own mortality, but our inability to accept the deaths of those we love. The Micmac burial ground beyond the deadfall doesn't offer resurrection but perversion, a grotesque parody of life that punishes hope with horror. The symbols burrow under the skin, a child's procession of animal funerals, trucks barreling down a rural highway, tiny footprints in mud mixed with blood, and a scalpel held in little hands that should be holding toys. "I brought you something, Mommy," whispers a voice that should have been silenced by grief. What makes this universe so devastating is its perfect understanding of parental love as both salvation and catastrophe. Louis Creed's decisions aren't driven by evil but by the most human instinct imaginable, the refusal to accept that some separations must be permanent. The soil of Pet Sematary is fertile because it's watered with an uncomfortable truth, that grief can make monsters of us all, that love without acceptance becomes a kind of madness, and that sometimes the kindest act is to let go of what we cannot bear to lose. Psychoed Bates Motel. Shower curtains will never be innocent again. Alfred Hitchcock didn't just direct a film in 1960. He redrew the map of American Gothic, placing it not in decaying mansions but in roadside motels where anyone might stop for the night. Norman Bates welcomes us to a universe constructed from our fear of the stranger. Not the obvious outsider, but the pleasant, shy boy next door whose politeness masks unthinkable compulsions. We all go a little mad sometimes, he explains with a smile that suddenly seems too wide. The visual grammar remains inescapable. Stark shadows on tile walls, a silhouette behind a shower curtain, stuffed birds frozen in predatory poses, and a rocking chair seen from behind. 45 seconds of violin stabs have made generations afraid to wash their hair with their eyes closed. Psycho's psychological landscape is complex terrain. Norman isn't merely a monster but a victim of abuse, isolation, and his own fractured mind. Hitchcock forces us to feel uneasy sympathy for someone who carves both identities and bodies, suggesting the unsettling possibility that empathy and horror can coexist in our response to human brokenness. Mother isn't just upstairs in this universe, she's inside all of us. The voice of internalized judgment, shame, and rage that we struggle to silence. What keeps us checking into the Bates Motel again and again is the nagging suspicion that perhaps the distance between Norman and ourselves isn't as vast as we'd like to believe. Rosemary's Baby, Roman Polanski's 1968 masterpiece, didn't need to show us the devil. It simply suggested his presence in the concerned smiles of helpful neighbors. This universe unfolds in upscale Manhattan apartments rather than forgotten castles, making the unholy feel uncomfortably domestic. Rosemary's Baby manifests our anxiety about loss of bodily autonomy. Few horrors cut deeper than the realization that one's own flesh has been colonized, used against one's will, particularly when that violation comes disguised as care from those we're told to trust. The imagery crawls under the skin, a woman eating raw chicken liver, scratches appearing mysteriously on flesh, tannis root in a locket too strange to be fashionable, and a black bassinet crowned with an upside-down cross. God is dead, a character declares, but something else is very much alive. Philosophically, this universe confronts us with the horror of gaslighting, how reality itself can be manipulated until we doubt our own perceptions. The true terror lies not in supernatural conception, but in the conspiracy of ordinary people willing to sacrifice an innocent woman for their own advancement. Perhaps what makes this universe endure is its uncomfortable parallel to how society often treats women's bodily autonomy, suggesting that the difference between supernatural horror and everyday patriarchy might be merely a matter of degree, not kind. A Nightmare on Elm Street. Sleep, that most vulnerable state, that most necessary surrender, became the battlefield Wes Craven chose for his 1984 slasher masterpiece. Here, the monster doesn't wait for you to enter his domain. He finds you when you cannot possibly escape, in dreams. Freddy Krueger embodies our fear of guilt made manifest. The sins of the parents literally revisit their children, wearing a dirty red and green sweater and a glove of razors. Unlike his slasher contemporaries, Freddy doesn't silently stalk. He taunts, he jokes, he plays with food before eating. The dream logic of this universe burns into memory. A girl dragged screaming across a ceiling, a tongue emerging from a phone, arms impossibly extending, and bloody footprints following a girl into a school boiler room. 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. A nursery rhyme perverted into a death knell. What elevates Elm Street beyond simple shock is its exploration of collective responsibility. The parents of Springwood committed murder to protect their children, only to doom them to something worse. The universe suggests that unacknowledged guilt doesn't dissipate. It festers, grows claws, and returns wearing a fedora. When we finally fall asleep tonight, some part of us will wonder, if nightmares can kill, are we ever truly safe inside our own minds? In Freddy's universe, even closing your eyes is an act of courage or perhaps foolishness.
Subscribe for more interesting stuff. Tell us your experience in the comments.